Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to Spiritual Psychic TV and Being Spiritual with your host, me, Ashley Robinson. It's a wonderful, glorious Friday night in South London this evening. It's a little warm and I've been a little sweaty. I do hope wherever you are, you're safe and you've benefited from a lovely day. This evening is a spiritual philosophy show, and tonight's subject is a little bit about unhelpful energies. So looking forward to all of your comments, and I'll try and ask as many of your questions, and we'll try and name check a few of you to let you know that we know that you're watching us. If you're on YouTube this evening, please make sure you've logged in with a YouTube account. They're absolutely free of charge. You can then participate in the live chat. And remember that all of your comments, folks, are public and can be seen by other members of the community. For those of you on Facebook, you just need to comment simply on the wall post and we should be able to see your comments. Now, this evening, I ask that we send our collective healing powers and prayers to everybody in needing, and in particular this evening to our producer, Richard James's nephew. And although Richard has started the show this evening, he's off to go and help with some first aid. And let's just think of Richard's nephew and send him some love and light, a speedy recovery from any physical suffering he's going through now. And Godspeed, Richard, on your journey to go and help out. If you are on YouTube, folks, remember to give us a thumbs up. If you're in the live chat, you have to close the live chat to do that. Let us know you like the content. It all helps with the algorithms and the YouTube trolls watching. And if I'm on Facebook, you can use any of the usual Facebook icons. You can give us thumbs up and loves and laugh when appropriate and care too. All of those things are really important to us, and always have a good look back through the show. The other thing you can do for us, folks, is to help us build this community. So if you're a Facebook user even, hopefully you're already a part of the SPtv fan page. Do find that page over on Facebook and engage with the wonderful community that is Spiritual Psychic TV. You can also find my own page at Ash Robinson Medium. That's at Ash Robinson Medium. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook, as you can also find SPtv across all of the social media channels. And if you're watching this stream live, why not share it? Why not share it right now and tag one of your friends in? Let them know you're watching a Spiritualist Philosophy show. And tonight you can ask Ash anything reasonable, anything spiritual, although our subject matter is predominantly going to be around unhelpful energies. Now, I want to do a couple of hellos to people that I know are watching. And if you are a first-time viewer, welcome to Being Spiritual. Do let us know where you're watching the show from tonight. And a special hello to, of course, all our regular viewers that have come back. We just celebrated 12 months airing this show. Really exciting milestone for me. I've just seen Stace Shaw there. Good evening to you, Stace. And Mary Dixie, my circle leader. Christine Marius, good evening to you, my friend. Joanne Lewis as well is on YouTube. Hiya, Joanne. Welcome. I know that my mum and dad are watching my boys this evening, and boys will probably be on the telly and they'll be watching this on their phone this evening. So hello, mum and dad, and thanks for parenting tonight for me, looking after the boys. That's very much appreciated. Lovely Terry Wall. Okay, thanks, Richard. Good luck. And Lynn Taylor, good evening to you, Lynn. Christine Davis and Sally Ann. And we got Christina Davis, Alison Barton, Lynn Taylor. Good evening to you, Marcus Laps, a lovely medium there. My good friend Julie Caswell. Hiya, Julie. Terry Wall doing all the admin, but loads of fantastic hard work behind the scenes. Thank you, Terry. Hiya, Stace. Good evening to you. Olivia Louise Funwood says, good evening, Ash. Hi, Richard. Hi, everyone. Hope we're all well. Hiya, Olivia. Pamela Rogers. Pamela Roger. Good evening, Pamela. We got Christine Marius. Good evening to you. Yeah, Mum and Dad are watching. Debbie Westwood. Good evening to you on Facebook. Tracy Jance Von Verum says, I'm new to this channel. Hiya. Special welcome to you. Lots of healing going to Richard's way. Thank you, folks. That's very much appreciated. Debbie Westwood there. We will see how strong my multitasking is this evening, folks, as I attempt to keep going what Richard started, and hope the production foundation is strong for me. Lynn Taylor and Nicola Lambie, hiya from sunny Dorset. Dorset's almost always beautiful, but it's been lovely today, Nicola. Welcome to the show. And we got Jennifer Rogers from Oklahoma. Good evening to all of our friends across the pond. And to those of you on Facebook, hello to you also. So tonight's show, Cheryl Flint, I know that she was on Facebook as well. Hi, Cheryl. Good evening to you, and I'll try and mention other people as the names come up. So, unhelpful energies. Then, what do we mean by unhelpful energies? I suppose we really need to start with what we mean by energies, don't we? And then helpful energies. And if we think back over the last year of shows, we've spoke about spirit. Spirit beings, spirit friends, spirit guides. We've spoke about people's personality, their consciousness. And if you remember, good evening, Caroline. I've always said that the difference between a human being alive and well in the 3D Earth world and the difference between them and a corpse is the absence or presence of their personality, their consciousness. And I've always believed that it's the consciousness that continues a life after life once that 3D human body is unable to maintain ourselves, be that through physical health often or old age. Ask April Worcester. Hello, good evening to you. So when we talk about energy, we've also dedicated an entire show to what is or who is God. And we've spoke about my own personal belief. And indeed, a couple of weeks ago for the 12-month show, we asked all of my guests to come back and we asked them what they thought of God. And as I said, I've always believed that God, for me, Mother, Father, God, as I often refer to them in prayer, is the sum totals of all of the energy, of all of the particles of the universe. And when I think about Mother, Father, God, I think about a force. I think about that divine presence, that divine force. And ultimately, for me, the world exists in different types of vibrating energy. And on Earth, as we are now communicating in this 3D experience, I think there are only so many things that you can achieve in other forms of energy. But vibrating at this energy using our traditional senses, we are aware of, the traditional things, that how we interact and engage with people. And it's in this experience that we can do lots of wonderful things. We can do lots of great things. And at the end of our life in that body, our life after life, it's the evidence we get from mediums of that personality, evidence of those personalities and their consciousness in a life after life. And often that can be seen as quite helpful. It can be helpful evidence of life after death. Hi, Ashina. And we've spoke about the concept of reincarnation, concept of karma. And we've spoke about, kindred spirits, like attracting like, birds of feather flocking together. And we've spoke about the fact that in your incarnation, be that your first incarnation, your 100th, your 1000th, your 100,000th incarnation, assuming that the concept of reincarnation is possible, the most important thing right now is how you live this life, how you experience this life, the experiences you go through that dictates your next actions, your next behaviors, assuming there's an element of destiny involved in how the people evolve you, how the people around you react and evolve. Now, all of those things ultimately influence our life, and it's at the end of our physical life that we have the opportunity to look back on that earthly life from that place I call heaven, or the spirit world. Now, I have a belief in one afterlife, that is one life after this life, but I've often spoke about it as vibrating on different frequencies. Indeed, if you ask me what do I think heaven is, I've spoke about heaven as a place of pure thought, heaven as a place of pure energy. Hiya, Nicola. And I spoke about the different vibrations, haven't I? And I've spoke about the fact that why I think that traditionally within, say, Christianity and other major religions, we think about heaven as above us, is because the people who live in that place I call heaven are vibrating at a faster level. So here we are on Earth vibrating at this level, and then people in the spirit world are vibrating ever so faster, all of it existing at exactly the same time. And when we have evidence of life after life from that place I call heaven, I often talk about it being a place that perhaps we start our life, and that's where we go back to. I spoke about the fact that the concept of conception, when children are first conceived, how that energy that starts to grow inside the mother, they've just come from that place I call heaven, or the spirit world. So I think it's possible to start and finish our lives there. Now, heaven, I believe, is a big place. It's not limited in the same physical ways. Hiya, Nadia. Same physical ways that this world is limited, and it can be everywhere and all at the same time. I think that time has a slightly different, if at all relevant, concept. But the evidence of personalities, that's as a medium, that's what I believe my principal job is as a medium, is to give my client, to give my congregation evidence of life after death by giving evidence of that personality, the personality of the person they used to be. So you know it's them when they then give you a message. Now, just because they suddenly live in that place called heaven doesn't mean they suddenly become an ascended master with all this extra knowledge and wisdom. And indeed, when I've read for clients, I've said, you're very welcome by way of experiment to ask your communicator, who you've now verified, a couple of questions. Hiya, Sharon. But of course, don't ask them a question that they couldn't have asked while they were alive. So if your nan was into banking and she was a financial advisor and you want her financial advice, great. If you just went to your nan for her opinion, great. Go to your nan for your opinion, but don't actually ask her for financial advice if she's not qualified to give it. In the same way, you can't ask your mum for medical advice. Now, I think all of that exists, and all of that is as it is. So talking about tonight and unhelpful energies, what are we talking about then? Because we talk about heaven as a wonderful place, as a beautiful place, a place of pure energy, of pure love, of pure light, a place of pure thought. So what do we mean by unhelpful energies? Well, for me, it could be anything up to and including the evidence of the personality of the person that's died. Because not everyone who lives this life, who lives on earth with us right now, lives the perfect life. Indeed, none of us probably live a perfect life. Some of us are cheeky, and hopefully as a medium you get evidence of that cheeky personality, of that saucy or sassy personality. But some people are just downright wicked. There are some people who are evil. There are murderers and rapists and paedophiles and human traffickers and all sorts of scumbags that continue to live on this earth with us. Do those people, when they die, go straight to heaven? I suppose it depends on your understanding of heaven, because I've spoke about my belief in one afterlife, one place I call heaven. But actually, I think that in the same way that we think about heaven as a higher place, hiya, Sharon. And although I think about heaven as a higher place and a higher level of vibrations, I think that it's also therefore natural that when people think about hell and they think about it being beneath us, that perhaps it is that people that live in that afterlife of a darker mentality are actually vibrating at a slower energy, a lower energy. And therefore, when we think about darkness, we think about bad things or bad people. Perhaps it is that it is still a lower level of energy, a lower level of frequency. Now, on some of the shows when we spoke about the concept of reincarnation, we introduced a character who my good friend Ralph Steadman used to refer to as Newman, the new human. And as Newman incarnating Earth for the first, second, third, dozenth time, it's very natural that if Newman had the equivalent of Blockbuster Video, and for any of my younger viewers, that's what we used to do before we could stream videos, we to physically pick them up and rent them. Wonder how many of you remember the wonderful place of Blockbuster. Shame they didn't cotton on to streaming, eh? Anyway, if they had the ability to walk into the Blockbuster equivalent of This Is Your Life and to think about the life that you're going to incarnate, why would you, in your first experience on Earth, choose a really difficult or hard life? In fact, you're most likely, I think it'd be natural for me, from my own instinct, to go for a life where you've got a very healthy family that you're about to be born into, where you're not going to have to want for food and drink. And actually, depending on how well you go for it, because you might go for the bigger house with more money. Cheryl remembers Blockbusters. Yeah, it was a good way to spend a Friday night. Well, there was this opportunity, isn't there, to perhaps live that life and perhaps live several lives in that way. And of course, if you keep going for life with a big house, we don't have to work and plenty of staff to serve you, perhaps you get to the point that actually you are hurting others. As part of your experience in pursuit of happiness, you are starting to hurt others. And actually, as you get towards the end of that life and you look back at that life, you realize that. Now, I don't know if you have to do that once, twice, 100 times, 1,000 times before your higher self gets to that point of realizing. But I do accept that there is this possibility of reincarnation. So let's say you have to do it 100 times. I say it could be 1,000, it could be 10,000. At some point, there becomes this stepping point where you've kind of earned so many negative points by hurting other people in your experiences that you consciously start to shift and you start going for the difficult experiences, the harder lives, because you start to recognize that in order to truly understand it. Hiya, Margaret from Birmingham. In order to truly understand it, you need to experience it. Perhaps you want to experience it so you can help. Perhaps you want to go through it as a carer, as a supporter. Now, in my human existence, I find it very difficult to comprehend why you'd go for the really difficult stuff. And I have no explanation for things like why does child cancer exist and all the other horrific things. But I do believe to a certain extent that some of that is chosen, or you choose it as part of a group of other souls. We spoke about soul groups before on this show, where you choose to go through those experiences. But it might be after your 100th life that you start to recognize that. And at that sort of tipping point, you look back at your life and you look back at your influence. Because in the same way that we speak on this show about being spiritual, and we speak about seeking advice and guidance and a steer from our guides and inspirers, perhaps in your first few incarnations where you're not spiritually awoken, you are attracting like to like. And if you are working in a dark way with dark thoughts and dark actions and negative actions, you start to attract that darker energy, those unhelpful energies. Perhaps those people that have a life after life, that have made a prison of their own making because of the actions that they had while they were alive. Or it could be even sort of darker sort of elements or elementals and different types of energy. And that is that concept of like attracting like. And I want to share with you just a very quick paragraph from one of the books I've referred to a few times on this show. It's called Spiritualism Under the Microscope by my good friend, Mr. Ralph A. Steadman. And he talks a little bit in here about spiritual protection. And in one of his other books, and he actually wrote this book first, which is a practical spiritual primer. He speaks a little bit here about unhelpful energies. And I think it's really interesting because as we spoke about reincarnation, I talk about Ralph Steadman, I believe, inspiring me with my spiritual philosophy. I just want to share this little extract from this book. So Ralph talks about the fact of reincarnation. He talks about the fact there is a reason why perhaps your first few hundred lives of the journey are spent experiencing lives as the worst kind of human beings. Hiya, Jim. Ralph wrote in his book and lots of his books about metaphysics. In fact, we're going to dedicate a show to metaphysics. But Ralph goes on to say, in terms of a short summary, there are a range of dimensions, ascending spiritual vibrations, and also a range of entities who are capable of existence within those vibrations. Ralph said, our universe is the only dimension in which the vibrations are compatible with a physical existence. But there are many, many spiritual and often positive ones above us and some below us. Our dimension, the third dimension, is in the middle, and the one that can be influenced either by positive or negative energies. The negative entities below us consist of, in Ralph's opinion, elemental forces, principles of evil, sometimes referred to as the 7 deadly sins. Although there are more than 7 and a hierarchy of entities of evil which are known by different names in different religions, but are often within Christianity referred to as fallen angels. So let's go back to that concept of reincarnation. And when human beings first come into incarnation, they're without a doubt, they are without any form of moral or ethical background, nothing to mark their existence or experiences back so far. So they explore the new existence and they do everything to extract maximum pleasure in pursuit of happiness from all of those experiences. And Joanne says, do you think that when someone's frightened or passing over, get themselves stuck going over? And ask me that again in about 5-10 minutes, because Richard's not here. All the comments come up for 5 seconds, but jog my memory in 5 minutes. Spiritual law states that no entity can interfere with the life of a human being unless it is asked to do so. But by initial self-indulgence, I.e. Michelle, causing harm to others and bringing in negative energy, lower level entities are contacted and effectively invited in. Then once in, they will feed on the negative energies which the human being is generating, and so begins a vicious spiral. However, after a few hundred lives or so, so much negative potential energy has built up between the individual human being and the ideal state of harmony that the white line in the middle of road that we've mentioned earlier has to be neutralized. A very simple analogy is everyone's life is the feeling in the air. Now imagine, folks and friends, the feeling of a thunderstorm. So Ralph talks about the fact that as the storm gets nearer, the air gets very oppressive because the potential charge between the clouds and the earth increases, and you start to feel that pressure building up until eventually it reaches a critical point in which it has to be discharged by a lightning strike, after which the air once more feels pleasant and fresh. Alison, yeah, love, light and healing going your way for your sister. So the same sort of thing, folks, happens in human lives with one difference. In the thunderstorm, the potential builds up over a very short period of time, usually a matter of hours, whereas the potential energy in our lives, in our various incarnations, builds up over those many lives, perhaps dozens, hundreds, even thousands of lives. And it can't all be discharged in one go. And if you think that each individual negative action which has caused damage to another person has to be neutralized, and this can only be done by the human being experiencing the same thing in reverse, you will see it could take hundreds, dozens or thousands of lives to undo the damage that has eventually been done. And eventually, of course, after many painful lessons, all human beings start to realize that there might be a connection between what they do to others and what they experience themselves. Karma, I call it karma, the start of an understanding of the law of cause and effect. And when they want to learn more, they are told about guides, helpers, and other spiritual beings and how to invite them in, and so start the last stage of their spiritual journey. Now, I think that extract from his book is really apt, because when we're talking about unhelpful energies, it talks about this concept of reincarnation, which I've said many times, for me as a spiritualist, isn't a necessity of being spiritualist, but for me it's part of my grounding, my spiritual understanding, and I do accept that reincarnation is possible. And for me, that bit about karma, and we dedicated an entire show to karma, which you can watch on playback if you didn't watch it, really important about sort of understanding that and understanding that sort of negative energy. Now, as a spiritualist medium, as a trainee spiritualist minister, as the son of spiritualist ministers and the friends of spiritualist ministers, spiritualist churches and centres, you kind of get that Ghostbuster effect every now and then, where something strange goes bump in the night and people start ringing for the local priest or the local spiritualist to come and investigate. And, you know, you've got Hollywood sort of dramatising this in things like, sorry, Joanne Lewis, Ashley, do you think that when someone's frightened or passing over, get themselves stuck going over? Oh, yes, right. I'll answer that, and then we'll talk about poltergeists. So I think I call that limbo. And I think that if you think about us in the 3D, the third dimension, the experience we're going through, if a life after life is not an obvious belief to you, when you cross over and you're free of your body, you are a vibrating higher frequency energy. And it's possible to get stuck. I think some people call this as a limbo. And indeed, within spiritualism, you'll hear the talk about rescue circuits and helping people find love, find light, continue to cross over. Some people speak about that fourth dimension vibrating at a higher frequency to us in the 3D dimension being more of a transition, more of a portal to the fifth dimension. Some people even go as far as to say heaven is actually in the fifth dimension, and the fourth dimension is that limbo. It's where they're trapped. As a medium, I believe that when people come through and communicate, hiya Kathy from Florida, as people communicate, they're communicating, the dimensions is not well known to me. They don't turn up and say, I'm from the 4th dimension or the 5th dimension. They just say, I'm Fred and I was their mum. And can you let them know I love them, for example. And therefore, I think that the dimensions or our understanding of the dimensions is not as important as just knowing that it's higher. And that's why people think about heaven as being above us. Sam says, can you refuse to come back and live another life? Yeah, I mean, I think that's absolutely perfect. I think some people may only live one life, Sam. It's absolutely possible. I think other people might live tens of thousands of lives. I think both are possible. Some people have more of a hardened theory that you must live thousands of life. Is that wheel of life? You start to, more simple, rocks and minerals and flowers, and you kind of work your way up. Other people say that, you've had that life and you get it and it's there. But the important thing is in this life, in this personality, how you live your life, how you have those experiences, Sam, that's what's important. So going back to these unhelpful energies then, and these things that go bump in the night, and Hollywood has spoke about poltergeists, and you look at modern spiritualism, you go back to the Fox sisters, you talk about the rappings and the tappings of Mr. Happyfoot, that was making that sort of communication in New York State. All of that is absolutely possible. Sharon says, if you're bad, can you still get to heaven? I think, Sharon, after you've finished with your body, your personality continues a life after that life. If you're a really bad person, perhaps that's at a lower level frequency, and you might have to do an awful lot of work, perhaps other incarnations to come back. I say some of these things only come up for 5 seconds, folks. So if I miss a question, that's because I can't multitask. Kathy says she was a warrior in a past life. Good on you, Kathy. Yeah, do throw the questions up again, particularly as I'm a very simple bloke and I can't multitask, and Richard's not here to slow them down or pause them or go back. So these unhelpful energies then, and what do we see as spiritualists when we go out there? Well, in my experience, which is limited, I know I look much older than I actually am, but I'm only 38 and I wasn't always allowed as a kid to go to these things. I used to hear the stories of my mum and dad and other ministers going to these places. The vast majority of the experiences, even the ones with physical phenomenon happening in the houses, often boil down to the physical phenomena, the physical energy being created by the people in that house. Sometimes it's been because of alcohol abuse or drugs abuse. Sometimes it's been some sort of domestic abuse. There has been problems in places of work. There's been allegations of theft or corruption or abuse, and someone's trying to get attention. So not everything that goes bump in the night, and indeed the Fox sisters didn't have a negative energy. They had a poor bloke that had been murdered in their home that was trying to get his message through. Margaret, we're not doing mediumship tonight. It's a philosophy show, but do check out Saturday night from 8 p.m. So Sharon says, my twin brother was not the best person, but I loved him. Died nearly before I could talk to him and feel unsure of whether he's at peace now. Sharon, I'm absolutely certain he is at peace. If you really feel unsure about it, you can ask a little prayer and an incarnation. And indeed, in a couple of minutes, I'm going to talk about how we keep negative energies and unhelpful energies out of our lives. Margaret, no need to say sorry at all. Sending you some love and light. Hiya, Kerry Taylor. So negative energies in our life. And we think about then these poltergeists, we think about looking for the supernormal before the supernatural. And that's when you have to start investigating, start finding out what's been going on. Terry says, why would there be a choice to stay when spirit can come and be with us why would they be a choice to stay when spirit can come be with us when they are, please? Terry, can you just rephrase that again? Because I'm a simple bloke. I think you're saying, why would there be a choice to come or go in terms of reincarnation? I think that's the higher self ability to decide. And it might be that actually free of your physical body and experiences, because you can recreate your body in more of a spiritual sense without any of the problems, be that mental or physical, you might just decide that you want to go back and do it again. I mean, I really liked Euro Disney in Paris, and I enjoyed it so much. When I went back the second time, I didn't go back and do things that I hadn't done before. I actually went back and did it again. I did exactly the same rides. I did exactly the same experiences that I loved because I loved them. So actually, why wouldn't you? If you've got the opportunity to reincarnate, go back and do the things you've loved. Perhaps you want to do it because of the variety. So Terry says, sorry, Ash, why would someone, when they pass, choose to stay here rather than go to the light? Terry, I believe that would predominantly be down due to lack of knowledge. So if you've grown up your entire life with the culture that there is nothing after your physical death, then that's what you expect. Psychologically, it's exactly what you expect. So you die, and there you are. I'm dead, and you're kind of just hunting around, thinking, well, what next? You know, perhaps you hang around as a bit of an out of body experience, and you see things, and you start to understand. Ultimately, people from heaven that would have known you will try and make themselves known to you. Sometimes that'll be around the immediate time of death. Perhaps there'll be a thing. No, I don't believe in that. I don't care if my mum or my second cousin twice removed has turned up to take me over to the light. There might be this sense of anger in the way that they've died, or regret things that they've left behind that they weren't able to finish, and things they weren't able to get done. Sometimes it might be that sense of panic or pain. Sometimes the psychological experiences they've gone through before they die take a long time. Nicholas says maybe if their death was sudden or unexpected, then they may want to stay with their loved ones. Yeah, that's true. And I've had experience with people that have been murdered that don't want to cross into the light. They're psychologically so pissed off and angry with the fact they've been murdered. They want to see justice. And perhaps justice is never going to come that way. Why do negative people seem to find mediums? Sam, good question. Well, I think that lots of mediums are like lighthouses, and they turn on a light. So, you know, and a light attracts light, and people when they're stuck or they're in darkness and they're looking for it. Pamela says, no, Ash, you can choose to stay if you have unfinished business. Yes, I believe that's possible too. Equally, I believe you can do that from the spirit world. It sounds like Richard might be back in the studio. Yeah, he is. Hey, Richard. Hope all has gone as well as it can be. Hey, Terry. Okay. Okay. Well, Richard's just given a report back. His nephew's as well as he can be. He's been taken to the hospital, and appreciates all of your love and light and healing. It's very much appreciated. Richard, I was just explaining to people that I haven't done so well with some of the long questions in the 5 seconds, because questions have come in rapid fire. I found it a bit tricky. So I've done my best. I think there's also a lot of side conversations, but I'm trying to keep up. So we've been talking about spiritual energies, haven't we? Both helpful, unhelpful folks, and we've also been spoken about that sense of limbo. And yes, someone, I think it was Pamela, was saying that people might have that unfinished business. They're not ready to move on. They're not ready to go into that next part of their life and experience that part of their life, because they feel they didn't finish what they wanted to do, and there's a reluctance to kind of go forward. That's what Pamela was just saying there. So yeah, that might be another reason that people stay in that limbo. And indeed, as a medium, I think I've given people from that place. Now, Tim says reincarnation is a choice of the individual discarnate spirit, not to all spirits. Choose to reincarnate. Some choose to be guides and developers and inspirers, guides from the spirit of life. Yes, very well put, Tim Abbott. Lovely Tim there. And for those that don't know, the letters after his name, the D stands for a diploma, which means he studied an awful long time and very hard with the SNU. A lovely man. He's doing some wonderful training at Women and Spiritualist Church on the 31st of July in a couple of weeks' time. It's also a remote service, so Tim will actually be zooming in. But if you're in Wimbledon, you can watch that from the church, or you can join us. It's an all-day workshop. There's going to be some fantastic stuff there. Now, Little Lambley says, maybe of their death was sudden and unexpected, they may want to stay with their loved ones. Yeah, that was the other thing. And there's this sense of psychologically being attached to that, and you're not quite ready. Now, I like to think that in my current life, with my belief in life after death the way it is, I'd be quite happy in the spirit world, in heaven, and I know that I can come freely between those worlds. I don't feel that the dimensions are like portals or stargates where you kind of get stuck in between. I think that it's possible to go up and down through them to a certain extent. I think that the more enlightened you are, perhaps the higher level of energy that you are, or the high level of vibrations that you are as a being, it's much easier to go down through the dimensions to communicate, as opposed to people stuck in the lower echelons and the lower levels. I think there's an element of them being weighted down and unable to pollute what is otherwise a place of pure love and light. But it's the afterlife, as far as I understand it anyway, and it's in that afterlife that people can communicate. And it might be that you spend an long time in terms of earth years in those places until you get to a point. those people in limbo. Perhaps they go off to the equivalent of rest and relaxation to repair any damage that would have been done to their physical body and their mental health while they're alive. Now, Sharon says, my twin brother was not the best person, but I loved him dearly and died before I could talk to him and feel unsure. Yes. So, Sharon, we were talking about this, weren't we? And I was saying that in a moment I was going to talk about incarnation and prayer, which is now a good point to go to that. Because how do we keep evil forces or unhelpful energies out of our lives and out of our spiritualist services and our spiritualist demonstrations? Well, I'm going to answer that question by asking another question. How do other religions do this? How does the Church of England or the Catholic Church keep unhelpful energies out of their churches? And well, certainly within Christianity and amongst most religions, people will talk about the power of prayer. And I'm a great believer in the power of prayer. In fact, we dedicated the entire show to the possibility of power of prayer. And we spoke about spiritual healing with the lovely Reverend Leslie Knight talking about the work she does at Women's Spiritualist Church on healing. But we also spoke about incarnation. We spoke about reincarnation, and we also spoke about positive thinking and wanting the things to happen that are actually happening. Now, if we think about prayer and we think about that concept of prayer, then within most Orthodox religions, there's some type of prayer book. And it's within that prayer book that people would recite certain phrases or certain chapters. That's one of the ways through that positive thinking coming together that I believe we can protect ourselves, we can protect our lives. But if we think about the word invocation, it actually is from Latin. And again, this is a Ralph Steadman teach, but the Latin words in and vocare, when you bring them together, mean calling in. So if you think about that concept of calling in, and anyone in a Catholic church is, of course, well aware of this, as they frequently call in various saints for specific purposes. And for those that don't know, I'm married to a wonderful lady, my best friend, Claire. Claire is half Irish. She's got a Catholic upbringing. She's also studied and qualified as a spiritual healer, but would still refer to herself as a Catholic. In fact, I was married in a Catholic church and then blessed by my mum and dad and had a spiritualist blessing afterwards, in the same way my kids were baptized both Catholic and spiritualist. But if you think about within Catholicism, for instance, the Virgin Mary could be invoked by women for protecting them during childbirth, or St. Christopher, a traveller, for making a difficult journey. St. Martin is often invoked to help people with financial problems. And there's a whole host of saints who have been invoked and asked to perform miracles in the lives of those in need. In fact, invocation is built into the very fabric of most religions, particularly within Christianity, from my own experiences. And for me, this is exactly how we protect ourselves. We spoke about the fact that we had a show, didn't we? Julie Caswell joined us. We spoke about spiritual tools. We spoke about the use of things like Ouija board. And we said that, you know, your physical front door to your home, you only let people in that you know and people that are invited. Otherwise, most people keep their door closed, and most of us keep it closed and locked. No one leaves their front door open all of the time with a big sign that effectively says, come in, everyone welcome. And if we leave ourselves, if we think about our own physical self and our own mind now about being open or closed, about that front door, about, you know, words we spoke about, gatekeeper, haven't we, a couple of weeks ago in our spiritual guides, all of that for me is about who we're inviting in, who we're not, and who we're inviting to be quite close. And it might be when someone's saying about people in need of help find mediums, because mediums, although their house is secured and closed and the door is locked, they've still got the lights on, and people in darkness can see that light. Terry says, I think the one thing we all believe here is the same, is that there is life after physical death. Yeah, absolutely, Terry. I'll drink my water to that. Cheers. So, the short answer to how we keep evil forces and unhelpful energies out of our lives and out of our churches is exactly the same methods as most religions. So Tracy says, oh, wow, yeah, I was brought up Catholic. Makes sense. Thank you, Tracy, for that confirmation. So we're thinking about invocations. Let's just dive in a little bit deeper, because remember, we dedicate a show to spiritual law. spiritual law said that if spiritual beings are invoked by calling their name, some people would say, several times or 3 times, they can be forced to be present. But within spiritualism, that power of prayer, there are archangels or ascended masters, guides that people bring close to them, in the same way that within Catholicism we pray to certain people. For instance, Michael, the archangel Michael, is often called Lord Michael. He was the Lord of the heavenly host. So his main function is protection. And some people invoke that physical protection of the archangel Michael. There's Raphael, the archangel of healing, routinely invoked when there is an illness or long-standing. And then I think his name was Zadkiel, the archangel of transmutation. This archangel is in charge of one of the rays of creation, the violent ray, and is invoked to clear all negative energies from a place, condition, or around a person. So this happens within spiritualism, this happens within major religions. We invite those people in who we see as protection. But one of the most simple things that you can do, folks, is to think about yourself. Now, if you're ever feeling under the weather, under attack in some way, it's important in your own mind's eye. We talk about the mirror, don't we, in the mind's eye, or the blank canvas. And one of the best bits of advice I was ever given by a lady called Vari Kent, who was a fantastic remote viewer amongst other things. She spoke about the fact that she was aware sometimes people would send her that negative thoughts, and there might even be negative energy trying to disrupt the good work that she was doing. And what she did in her mind's eye was create an absolute clone of herself who stood behind her to fight, quite literally, have her back. And any sort of spiritual attack or psychic attack was directed to the clone behind her. But the other thing around invocations that Vari Kent spoke about me is keep it simple. We're not meant to have this fantastic, wonderful knowledge of metaphysics to be able to do all these things. The power of prayer, the power of intention, these invocations, make it as simple for you to understand. And one of the things I still do quite regularly now, and I've had great success from people that say that things are going bump in the night, is to see yourself in your mind's eye. And if you've got the moment and it's safe to do so, you're not driving or anything like that, imagine yourself, just close your eyes for a moment, and in your mind's eye, see yourself. Within that mirror, in the mind's eye, as it's clear, you see yourself. And now you see yourself standing upright and tall. In your hands, you are holding a sword. And for me, this is a big old-fashioned sort of medieval sword. My dad would know the exact type of name for this sword, but it's got a handle, a T-bar that goes across, and I'm holding this sword quite close to my chest and my heart. And as I hold this big sword, it comes right above my head. And what I say to myself is, I stand for love. I stand for light. I stand for truth. And if I am a lighthouse and I'm sending out this signal, then that signal is also represented by those other powerful things. So unconditional love, quite arguably the most powerful thing in the universe, I'm representing myself as standing for that love. And I stand for light. Part of my invocation around me about protecting myself is that love, light, and truth, words which are powerful to me. So find words and values which are important and powerful to you. And just by closing your minds, closing your eyes, physical eyes, and then visualizing in your mind's eye, that type of positive thing should be enough to protect you. And of course, as you progress within your own spiritual development, you start to meet your guide, perhaps your principal guide, your guardian angel, your guide team. You'll involve different people, and some of those you'll associate with protection. When I felt particularly difficult situations, or I've gone into an environment which has been particularly hostile, my security team expands. And, my principal guide that I often speak about in this show is for mediumship is a guy called Bob Brunton. Was very much a godfather figure to me while he was alive. He was a boxer and a healer, and I always associate him with strength. And I imagine him as like my doorman. He's on the door. I mean, as I developed my own spiritualism, I realized that he's part of a team of people. But certainly when I was sitting in Cirque, he was one of the first people I was able to communicate with from the spirit world that was to help me with that guide. Now, when I've gone into an environment that I felt there could be an element of negative or unhelpful energies, that security team, he brings in all the extra bouncers. He brings in, the retired special forces and the TA soldiers and everyone else in my mind's eye. And I keep it nice and simple. And I see all these people, surrounding me, perimeter fences go up, and it's all about protection, and just keeping it simple and visualizing it. And the final little thing I'll give you is, again, was another thing from Vari Kemp. And she used to speak about the concept of an oyster shell, and that hinge sort of oyster shell. And she used to say you could put your entire home inside the oyster shell, recognizing that the shell is physical protection and nothing can get in. And the reason she used to speak about the hinge, she said you needed a front door. You needed a front door that you could protect, and you could still invite people in. Of course, if you needed to retreat and go off the road for a little while, you could close the shell. But she used to talk about that. And again, it's just a really powerful thing where people have felt that their home isn't safe. I've got them to go through that in their mind's eye, and they've been able to create that level of security and protection. Because some of these negative or unhelpful energies are around because we've inadvertently invited them in. Perhaps we have opened the front door. And the metaphoric of that, on a Ouija board, we've gone onto a Ouija board. We've not had any type of grounding or protection or understanding of our guides. And we've effectively said, anyone who wants to communicate us from anyone in an afterlife can. That's a totally different thing as to me saying with my guide team, right, we're going to have a communicator come through that's going to evidence themselves, no imposters, no jokers, and then we're going to use the board in a particularly different way. And the thing is, there are lots of disciplines that come with working as a medium or working as a healer. And although all of the standards differ slightly between organizations, most people that are working as mediums would probably agree with me. There is no alcohol to be taken before you're about to work as a medium, doing any sort of inspirational talking or speaking, because alcohol changes our mind and our body. There's a reason why it's illegal to drink too much alcohol and then drive. It influences your decision making. It perhaps relaxes you, perhaps means you take more risks. So it's all about having a discipline with this type of stuff. And of course, in your own home, you tend to relax, don't you? If the equivalent of, traffic lights, if red was you on absolute full alert, totally aware, totally secure around all your environment, you'd be exhausted if you stayed in red all of the time. And actually, most of us can live quite happily in amber, and we can suddenly spring to red, or quite easily, Sunday afternoon on the couch, rugby's done, I'm now chilling out and I'm in green because I feel happy and I feel safe. I don't see any imminent threat. And then perhaps I start to have some alcohol. It's family barbecue. I'm relaxing. I'm enjoying myself. I'm a little bit tired. And yes, you can let those guards down, but you're in green now. You're in green mode, and you're wanting to do that from a place of safety. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But if there are all sorts of things going on in your life, and alcohol is part of something that you're using, there is drugs involved and people losing their temper, in the same way you can feel that argument, those energies can build up. And perhaps some of those more mischievous of personalities that have a life after the life they had, some of those more negative or disruptive, unhelpful energies, they're able to find their way in. Of course, there is the other opposite of the power of prayer and invocation, and they are people, some might refer to them as so-called devil worshippers, or people that meddle with the dark arts. But for every positive, for every light worker, there is potentially dark workers. There are people that want to use the power of prayer not to help people, but to hurt people. This sense of spells or curses or wicked thoughts, but even swearing at someone or saying you hate them and you want them to do bad, and other things that people have said, all of that starts to invoke, particularly negative energies. And particularly if you believe in really dark things or the devil or that sort of pure evil, then you're encouraging those darker, unhelpful energies to be around you. Now, in London recently, very sadly, there was a trial of an absolute lunatic, very dangerous, evil man that believed he had a deal to sell his soul to the devil, and went out and killed two ladies on a picnic in a common in London, on the basis that the devil was then going to help him win the lottery. And without a doubt, had the Metropolitan Police not done such a sterling job in finding him, and had he not messed up and led his DNA at a scene, he would have gone on to murder others. Now, you have no idea if this person was incarnated on Earth for the first time, if they'd done it a few times, but without a doubt, dangerous, evil bloke. And that person was no doubt attracting similar like-minded people from that place that some of us might call heaven, others might call it hell, but this afterlife. So those unhelpful energies for sure. Right, my laptop is apparently running low, so I've obviously not plugged it in properly. So in the interest of the show not suddenly finishing, let me plug this in. Boom, there we go. That makes a difference. I didn't actually plug it in this time. And that, folks, in a sort of nutshell, is unhelpful energies and what we can sort of do about them. So there are lots of helpful energies, and I think there are lots more of, let's call them dimensions or different places. In the Bible, it's referred to as a house or a mansion with many houses within it, or a house with many mansions in it. Jesus, that was one of the Jesus sort of quotes, wasn't it, about talking about his Father's house and a house of many mansions. I think that the afterlife probably does have different dimensions to it, and that there's an element of almost like breadcrumbs or umbilical cords between these realms. And the evidence of our personality that comes back still incorporates and inherits the vast majority of the personality of the life that we lived. And there are some dark and nasty people around. They have a life after life. I don't think that they're knocking about in the same place that I think of the waiting room in heaven. I think there's an awful lot of help available to them. And I think, as I say, there's that element of limbo. But I do hope I've sort of given people a bit of an understanding into what I see as unhelpful energies and ultimately how to get rid of them. And the easiest way to get rid of them is to not have them in the first place. And it's to not make it easy for unhelpful energies to come anywhere near us. So protect yourself, protect your homes. I say a prayer every night. It's just a really, really simple one as I go to bed at night, where I count my blessings. And I often invoke Mother, Father, God, as I see as a divine force. And I just say that I'm grateful and I'm blessed for the certain things I have. Now, Joanne says, some find their way into churches. They enjoy turning light workers against each other. So some find their way into churches. They enjoy turning. So do you mean that some people find themselves in churches and they try and get light workers working against each other? If I've understood your question correctly, Joanne, or your statement correctly, I think you're talking about almost, I'm trying to think of a better way of calling it a stirrer. Let's call them a stirrer. A stirrer of bad things. And actually, I think that sometimes people are there to challenge us as part of those experiences. And if you've got a lot of good people doing good work and you see some wonderful people within spiritualism dedicating their lives to service and unconditional love, then yeah, there might be people in this incarnation that take a bit of pride in going in and messing around with that. Stace says shamans believe there are three worlds, the lower, middle and upper, and each one has its own lessons of purpose. Not sure what they are though, still I'm reading about it. Yeah, Stace, and there's some fantastic stuff there that the shamans sort of talk about. And I think all of the religions kind of own a little bit of the jigsaw actually on this, and you have to put all of the jigsaw pieces down and you have to then take that step back to see what the big picture is really telling us. But the most important thing is right now, isn't it? It's this life, it's this experience, it's how we live this life. If reincarnation and previous lives were really that important to me and to you and to us, I think that we'd be born with that knowledge. The fact is we're not. It's something that happens at a much higher level, probably in the existence of something greater than ourselves. Terry says, I don't understand why people are like that just because they don't believe in the same thing, religion. It's okay to believe in different things and people should respect that rather than fighting. Yeah, Terry, I don't know if you're referring to conversation within the chat or that in more general, but yeah, what a wonderful place the earth would be if everyone just kind of respected each other's differences in beliefs, because we don't all have the full map, do we? We don't have the full picture. We don't have every single truth. I give you the truths as I've come to know them, based on my own inspiration and my understanding from my guides and my inspirers, but I caveat it with the fact that it's still my opinion, and I have no right to tell you that it's absolutely all right. I believe it's right. I believe it's true, and it's come to be my truth. But you have to find your own truths, and we do have to respect each other, because let's just assume that reincarnation is possible. We're all on a different stage and a different level of those lives, and in terms of our own spiritual awakening and understanding, it's going to differ. Now, Julie says, we've been told via the board that some of our spirit group have been out sweeping away negative energy. Yeah, and I can agree that. I mean, if you dedicate your life as a spiritualist to service, unconditional love, and then after you've finished with your body, why wouldn't you continue to dedicate your life to service? And I think there is some fantastic work done from the spirit world. As Tim was saying, some probably sign up to become a guide. Yeah, I want to be a guide. Some people might say, well, next time that new human that's about to be born, I'm going to dedicate their entire earthly life. I'm going to dedicate my spirit life to that entire earthly life. I'm going to be there as their principal guide. I'm going to be there 24/7 to keep them on the straight and narrow, to keep them living the life that they're destined to live. Others might say, you know, I want a bit of training. My granddad Dell, whose birthday it would have been today, had he still been alive, I like to think he's celebrating with a cheeky little brandy in that place I call heaven. But he used to joke with me that there were enough people that upset him in his life that the first training course he was going on was that of not that of an ascended master. He was going to go on a poltergeist course. He was going to go and, you know, frighten the living bells out of all those that had been wicked to him in his life. And I'm sure in many ways, if he could make Terry was referring in general. Thanks, Terry. I'm sure if he had the opportunity to influence some of those things, maybe he would, because that was my grandfather's personality. Equally, yes, of course. Richard just wants to ask a question. Go, Richard. That's all right. Okay, folks, I'm just going to paraphrase a question that Richard's given us. There we go. Richard's going to take himself off mute so we can hear the question. Lovely. So something I said had triggered Richard's mind and his thought, folks. So he wants to ask a question, and we'll broadcast it live so you can hear the question.
Good evening, everybody. Hope you're well and that you can hear me okay. My thought was when you turn around and said that guides, we choose. Let's say I want to be a guide and I'm going to help this person on my straight and narrow, make sure he leads a good life. Paraphrasing what you said. If that's the case, why there's so much evil? Using your analogy earlier on about someone going out and hurting someone, where's the guide there? I know we have free will, but where's the guide to say, oh, well, wait a minute, mate, you can't hurt that person. That's not right. Where are they guiding you there?
I think that in that situation, the easiest analogy is Pinocchio. You know, Pinocchio's the new human, and your guide is Jiminy Cricket. He's your consciousness, and your conscious telling you the difference between right and wrong. Pinocchio ultimately could do whatever he wanted, and he had Jiminy Cricket constantly telling him the difference between right and wrong, but he still made his own decisions. And I think that the trouble is, and depending on the job or the gig you sign up for as a guide, you know that some lives are going to be more challenging than others to kind of guide. But the fact is, if you don't believe in a guide, if you don't know there is a guide there, how can you ask them for help? The guide cannot force itself upon you. They're there, ready to guide you, influence your instinct and your intuition. But you've got to say to them, I want some help. I'm not sure what to do here. Equally, you've got to listen to them when they're giving you that feeling that this is wrong. Now, with some bits of programming within the human body, you've heard the sort of, psychopaths and, the people that can't tell the difference, or they have no remorse, even if they know it's wrong. Some of that is physical. I call it code. You know, you're a coder. You understand that in the techie world. It's like the code is broken. And, for everything that was meant to happen in that body, there's something broken in that code. And this person, is a psychopath. And it doesn't matter how often the guy tries to influence them. They're not listening, or the code is just broken. Equally, there is this sense of free will. And even if you had agreed the way you're going to live your life, but you're influenced suddenly by other events or other things in your earthly life, you can continue to ignore that guide. Now, I like to consider myself a relatively enlightened bloke. I've got my own show talking about being spiritual, so I hope that gives you enough qualification. I'm a good spiritual bloke. But every now and then I don't listen to my inner self, and I don't listen to my guide. And I'll give you an example. I'm morbidly obese and I'm overweight. And I know that most of you can probably see that from watching me on camera. But there is a part of me, and I think that part of me is my brain, because I'm not a stupid bloke. I'm relatively intelligent. That will say to me, "Stop eating," or "Don't eat that." Particularly when I've been in terrible binges around compulsive overeating, and I've just ignored the guide because I like the feeling or the taste of the food, particularly sweet stuff, when I've become sort of addicted to that. The same with alcohol. As a teenager growing up, I'd sort of get to a point and I'd think, oh, I can have that sixth beer and I'll be absolutely fine. And then someone says, do you want a seventh beer? And there's a bit of my body saying, no, you don't need that. It's going to make you ill. And then there's my free will saying, oh, the night is young. I'll have that seventh beer. And I think that even for the most enlightened and spiritual people, there are sometimes you go against Witness Guide, or you just don't know it's there. Now, do you remember, Richard, we did a show about reincarnation? We spoke about the walkie-talkie or the smartphone in your bag. So if you think about your guide being on the other end of the walkie-talkie or the smartphone, first thing is, do you know there's a phone there? If you don't even know that the phone exists, how can you ever use it? If you find the phone, how does it work? How do you get through the PIN code? That's your opening and sort of closing. It's your attunement. If it's a walkie-talkie, it's about you tuning it in. Absolutely right. And then it's, of course, what sort of questions are you asking? Are you asking questions of how am I going to win the lottery? How can I earn more money? Or are you saying, what should I do in this situation? Or are you saying, shall I zig or shall I zag? And I think that the guide is limited to what they can see from their existence in life. It relies on you asking for that help, knowing that the help is there, knowing that they can sort of advise you or steer you, and recognizing that although they should be relatively experienced to have come in and got the job and gig to sort of lead you, they themselves are not necessarily a perfected soul. They might be working off some of their own karmatic debt by working with you. So does that answer your question, Richard? Okay, so yeah, Richard was one who said it didn't answer it at all, but he's saying yeah, I've gone some way to answering it. I answer a lot of questions with other questions, don't I? But yeah, the fact is we've got this free will, and it is the most powerful gift, and it is our gift. Do you remember a show, folks, we did on spiritualist principles? And my mum and dad on the show, didn't we? We were talking about the spiritualist principles at Wimbledon Spiritualist Church. We also covered off some of the other sort of major dominations within spiritualism. Most of spiritualist principles talk about this concept of individual personal responsibility. And I think it's a really important part in your life where you get to and you accept that you are responsible for your decisions, and that the only person that can forgive you for those are the people you've kind of sinned against. I'll answer your question in a moment, Joanne. I've just seen that pop up. It's one of the things that I've always found difficult within Catholicism, the idea that you could commit a sin, and as long as you commit it and you repent and you ask a sort of priest or someone else for forgiveness, that they can forgive you. Because I believe in personal responsibility. And if I've committed a sin, then all the people that I've hurt around that are the only ones that can forgive me. Perhaps they can forgive me in this life and in the now. Through my service and my sort of recreation. Otherwise, I might need to come back and do it differently. Now, Joanne says, if it's your pathway to have that experience, then they will leave you to go through it, but there to help you after. Yeah, Joanne, that's the other way of sort of looking at it is, and it's difficult. Again, this is difficult for me as Ash, the human being, to understand. You know, if you were going to live a life as a murderer, what guide in their right mind is going to sign up for that job and say, look, Fred Bloggs has signed up, he's going to be a murderer, and I'm going to guide him through his life. And it's really difficult one to sort of understand. So we'll keep it hypothetical as opposed to specifics. But when I discuss this with different mentors and tutors and stuff over the years, different people have said different things to me. But often the answer I've had has been something along the lines of, maybe the person that was going, has gone back to do that murdering was because they had been murdered in a previous life, and in terms of forgiving the person who wants to understand the murdering, and I think, well, hang on, that doesn't make sense. Surely you might have been a murderer first, and then you come back and be murdered. Okay, well, what if you get towards the end of your life and you've never murdered anyone, but there are people that have done the murdering, and they come and find you in the spirit world, and they say, look, I'm making this up again. Ash, do me a favor. While I was alive, I killed people, or killed you, and actually I've never been killed, and as part of recreating my life, I need to go through that experience of murder to understand what it's gonna be like. And perhaps as part of some sort of soul contract, you agreed to go back and commit that murder or go through that experience as part of the other person sort of living through that experience, living through that karma. Perhaps there's something even deeper there. You're going to go back and you're going to do the murder, and then you're going to come back and you're going to be the person that helps change the law. You're going to create some sort of bill or some sort of new law. Perhaps you're going to go in and form a charity that's going to help the victims of families of people that have been murdered. And as part of that experience, you recognize that murder was going to take place. All of that, I say, is hypothetical. because I've not evolved to a point in my life where I'm able to rationalize that and understand why you would consciously go back and decide to do something that bad. But perhaps it's part of some type of soul contract. Perhaps it's just that you're selfish and you're choosing in life, and actually your guide is just going to guide you through and be there for you when you do need them, or you've not been listening to them. That's part of the experience too. Stace says it's like being a parent. You can tell your child to tie their shoelace or they will fall. They know it hurts when they fall, but they ignore the advice and they don't tie their laces. Yeah, there is a part of people continuing to go through that. And there's also a part of you surrendering yourself, isn't there? Surrendering yourself to the will of someone else. We all like to be in charge. We like to be the architects of our own lives and to think that we're in charge of it. Perhaps some of us don't like the idea of destiny and we can do whatever we want. And destiny for me is powerful, but it's not indestructible. Because if my destiny is to live till the right age of 90 years old, but I take up a hobby of jumping in front of buses, I'm perhaps not going to make it till I'm 90. So Joanne says, the thing is, soldiers murder people, but they are not bad people. So Joanne, really good question. And in fact, I've had lots of people from armed services that have come to spiritualist churches and asked that question. And it goes back to what it is they were doing. There's an awful lot of evidence within spiritualisms about the Second World War, where spirit had come back and given direct evidence to say, look, you're not just fighting the bad guys. You're not just fighting Germany. You're fighting an evil within Nazism that must be defeated. And therefore, if you are taking someone's life before they take your life or other lives, it may well be reasonable. And if you think about international law and the concepts of using lethal force, of using force which is going to kill someone, for it to be justified, for it to be lawful, there has to be reasonable grounds to believe that you or another are in imminent danger. So, soldiers, police officers, other people that are effectively on the right side, they are the so-called good guys or good girls. Perhaps to stop a bad person with a gun, you need a good person with a gun that's doing it for the right reasons. So yes, taking someone's life is never, I don't think, a great thing and part of destiny that I could consciously or rationalize and understand it. But yeah, absolutely, there are soldiers and police officers and other types of people who are here to prevent bad people from doing even worse things, and therefore in those circumstances it's lethal. And I think that we, certainly in the UK, we have some of the world's best trained armed services and police services, and that will only make that decision to take someone's life on the basis that it's going to stop the threat. I don't think anyone pulls the trigger necessarily with the absolute determination to kill, and certainly not to murder. What they're doing is they're pulling that trigger perhaps to stop the threat, and perhaps it's exactly why they were put on earth to help, because we're still imperfect, aren't we, humans? We're still running around with weapons. They're more modern weapons than the knives and daggers of the Dark Ages, but we're still doing hurt to each other. Until we've evolved to that point that there's no one hurting people, you need those good people, the sheepdogs, to watch over the flock, to watch over the sheep from the wolves. So yeah, really good pondering question there, Joanne, and hopefully I've given you sort of my opinions on it, and I've added to that. But yeah, absolutely, soldiers, particularly what I would call soldiers within the Allies, people signed up to United Nations Act. These are people that are only going to take another life if it's absolutely necessary, and they're only going to use such force as necessary in the circumstances to stop that threat. So yeah, they're not bad people. They might find it difficult, and later in their life, and you think about all the post-traumatic stress and other things that cops and soldiers and other goes through, really, really difficult. I believe that part of that experience is something they're ultimately meant to have gone through. But again, as Ash Robinson, I can't rationalize that. Why would someone make the difficult decision to come back and be, a sheepdog and look after us all and look out for us, only to then have to live through taking someone else's life and not be comfortable with that, and to go through post-traumatic stress or something else? It's a very difficult thing. What I do know is that all of these experiences define the people we are. They make us the people we are. And that's the important thing. Again, it goes back to the concept of now, the concept of living this life now, recognizing you can only live this life once. Live it by every day. Do it hopefully in pursuit of happiness. Do it hopefully with service to others. And unconditional love is the only type of love that you get to send and receive. Those types of things in this stage of my life are really important to me. Have I done similar incarnations, tens, hundreds, thousands of times before to have got this point? Maybe this is my first life. Many people that understand and believe in reincarnation would talk about that evolution of growing and evolving at the same time. So, Joanne, great question. And I think that actually, in terms of time, that probably is the last question for the night. There's an opportunity now to do some adverts and to bring this evening to a close. But folks, I've had a really great time taking your questions. There's been some brilliant mindsets and philosophies shared. Hopefully I've said nothing to have caused offence to anybody, particularly when we talk about destiny and predetermination and sort of choosing lives. So I'm just giving you things that have been taught to me, and being honest, I found it difficult to rationalise some of it. I couldn't, as Ashley Robinson, rationalise things like child cancer because I just don't get that. But I do know it's about the now. It's about the power of now. It's about being authentic and bringing all of yourself to your home life, to your work life, to your spiritual life, living your best possible life, your best possible outcomes, playing the strongest hand every single time you can, asking for help and advice, recognizing there is help and advice there on the end of that metaphorical walkie-talkie or smartphone, recognizing, appreciating, being blessed to have that wisdom, to have that direction, and then using your own free will, under our own free will and accord, to decide what to do next. Folks, it's been lovely to have you this evening. Do hope you've enjoyed this show. I'd now like to introduce you to a couple of adverts for this evening. I know that a few of you are asking about mediumship. And I say every Saturday night there'll be a wonderful medium for you and a brilliant demonstration of mediumship. Different reader every week, and that's tomorrow night from 8 p.m. both on Facebook and YouTube. Frederick Hugland is the reader this Saturday night from 8 p.m. Do check that out on Facebook and YouTube from 8 p.m. UK Greenwich Mean Time. And then our wonderful, I'm very biased, a divine service with my home church, Women and Spiritualist Church, of course, incorporating Hatbridge, broadcast live from Women and Spiritualist Church every Sunday morning from 11 a.m. on Spiritual Psychic TV. And your divine service will have a guest medium, a reading, an address, and a lovely divine service, often co-hosted by my mum and dad, Reverend Ray and Jackie Robinson. And this Sunday's medium at 11 o'clock, whose name I've forgotten. I can't remember it. It's gone. I'll tell you now because it's in my phone, because my wife booked him and she put something in the calendar. I'm just trying to think very quickly as I'm talking. And the medium is, oh yes, of course, the lovely Sam Pert. Sam Pert, regular on SPtv, and Sam is our Sunday morning medium. A bit of an advance message for you folks. An evening with Moria Hawkins and Tim Abbott. We were talking about old Tim earlier on, and he's doing a lovely, as I say, workshop for us at Women of Spiritualist Church on the 31st of July. Check out his workshop the 31st of July on SPtv. Brilliant website. If you haven't already checked it out, folks, there's a brilliant directory there. But this is an advance notice for you. Friday, the 23rd of July from 8 o'clock. It's an evening with Moira and Tim from 8 p.m. But on the SPtv website, there's a wonderful directory. If you haven't done it, check it out. Throw in your postcode, find out where your local spiritualist churches are and who your local centres are. Also on Saturday, the 31st of July, 8 o'clock, there's going to be a fundraiser, a wonderful fundraiser for a wonderful person. The lovely 14-year-old Freya is fighting against leukemia. So join us on SPtv for a fundraising evening with special guests Matt and Kirsty Grogan, Polly Harnett, Sam O'Neill, Jane Moulton, Marcus Lupser, Bill Hughes, Deb Clark, Wendy Lindsay, Sam Pirrett, Veronica Jenkins, Rachel Galbraith, the Robinsons, Ricky and Tyler. So my mum and dad are certainly be there. I'm hoping to be there too. A lot of that depends exactly what's happening during the day on at the church. But folks, do check this out for us. At the bottom there is a hyperlink to the website, and that is the donating page. We're trying to raise as much money as possible for a great cause. So join us for the fundraiser Saturday night, 31st of July at 8 p.m. Live readings, bingo, quiz, competitions, and a good old giggle. Sorry, Richard? Oh wow! So there's some fantastic competitions that night, and for everybody who donates, they will be entered into the competition. That's your way to enter the competition on the night, folks. So do get donating to a wonderful cause in support of the 14-year-old Freya who's fighting for leukemia. Let's send her our love, light, and healing to beat this horrific disease. It's a pleasure and privilege to be with you this evening. The world is. Sorry, Richard. Oh, okay. Sorry, I think some of you lost us. I was just saying how wonderful you all are, really. So I'll repeat that. You're all wonderful. Thank you very much for supporting the show, for supporting the SPtv channel. And it's been a really fantastic night to have been with you all. Thank you all for engaging. Thank you all for your comments. Stay safe and look after each other. Good night and God bless. Thank you.